Sacred Sojourners, a space where we gather around the fire for storytelling.
This is a journey of spiritual awakening, learning to trust in the universe and aligning to our highest path.
It's through our voices from the perspective of the masculine and the feminine, which is the real life dance between us, where we are going to share stories about our journey, our triggers, our love, all as we walk with the universe, not against it.
Zan and I are two souls having our human experience who are walking through the fire together with our three dogs. And now we're inviting you in to witness. If you've been feeling the pull to awaken,
Then you can finally start to trust.
and then to align to your highest good.
Now, you're exactly where you're meant to be. Hello, Sojourners. Welcome back to the Sacred Sojourner podcast, where we have campfire conversations for the spiritually curious, where we definitely do not bypass the fire, we walk through it.
Yep, walk through it.
My name is Zan Kavanaugh, and I am one of your co-hosts.
And I'm Troy Hawkner. I'm your other co-host.
So this is month 2, sweetie. And the first month we went through what it's like to wake up spiritually, right? And how was that for everybody?
Yeah, it was wonderful for me. In other words, recapping, seeing how I've been so close to it anyhow. It was real for me because of the rawness that's already there, because of how close it's been for me.
And in that we talked about, what it's like to wake up and what are some scaras and releasing your buckets and just having this awareness about agreements and taking things personally. But this month, be prepared. This conversation is going to go a little bit deeper because it's about the purification by fire. You're not just walking next to it and looking at the beauty of it. Now you're literally walking through it and letting that burn your insides, the purification by the fire. And you know a lot about that.
Yeah, and living this life I do
Yeah.
since my awakening. A lot of it reminds me of a forged piece of steel. As it gets melted, it does away with all the imperfections and the impurities. As the steel comes back together and cools off, it's pure.
Yeah.
And that's what the fire does. The light reveals the stuff inside that needs to be removed for us to be able to reach our higher self.
Yes, this is going to be a beautiful conversation today.
Yeah.
So, do you want to light the fire, baby?
Yeah. Here we go. Light the fire.
Awesome. Well, this is where we start to deconstruct the patterns. So we've had the patterns. We realize, whoa, those are coming from somewhere else. So those patterns, those behaviors, the reactions that have responses, the things that we have been calling ourselves, but they're actually just programming.
Right. Yep.
When we first met, I would say that to you a lot, right?
Mm.
I would just be like, that's just programming.
Right.
Did that make sense to you? Or were you like, I don't know what?
No, not at first. It didn't make no sense. We'd get into a discussion, and I would start reacting from a trauma, from my inner child and giving you a trauma response, and you would punk me out with it. Oh, that's just programming. That's not you.
Right.
But as I've come to understand it better and looking at it and looking at the inner child and the trauma work that I've done, it makes all the sense in the world now.
Yeah. And so we're going to try to create awareness around this, but know that this took Troy about 4 months to really understand what that programming is. So if this is new to you, just let it land softly, like a feather that is just slowly drifting to the ground, because healing takes time.
And I wanted to reiterate that it's just because you recognize it and the awareness comes in doesn't mean that it's fixed right away. That was one of my misunderstandings. Was, okay, I'm aware of it now, so it's all good.
Yeah.
But then when it was time to put it to exercise, the trauma response, and it's basically just a habit. It's kind of like a habit.
Yes.
Doing something that you do without even thinking about it anymore.
Right. And you've created what they call a neural net, which
Yep.
is like, your brain has already, it's firing all these neurons together in a pathway. And once you've done that for 90 seconds, a week, a month, a year, a marriage, a
55 years.
childhood. Yeah, all that. Then it becomes like concrete almost. And so this is where we're going to just be shining some light on that, because how you get to those patterns and behaviors is through what's called shadow work, the subconscious, which is where, from 0 to 7, you store information that your parents give you and you make it truth because you don't know anything until that. But around 7, you start making your own thoughts and choices and decisions. And so that is still your subconscious though. You
Hmm.
still take that information in and you decide this is yours, right? So that's where those patterns, then you start to decide from those filters, the inner child, which is, we will elaborate on that today, and what it really means to burn away these illusions, because the truth is, and we say that with love, because you are such a beautiful creature on this planet that was created in the image and likeness of God.
Yeah.
It takes so much for us to come down on this planet and be born, and we are pure of spirit when we come here. And
Yep.
so it's kind of a weird, cruel joke that you were like, hey, let's go back to the planet and forget everything. And then we have to like go through life learning who we are. And then we have to release all that programming to really become who we are.
Yep.
It's kind of
Yep.
a twisted little game thing.
Well, it's like Scripture says, becoming childlike, they inherit the kingdom of heaven. Jesus says, unless you come to me as a child, and I like what you just said, reprogramming yourself. It's going back to when I was 7 years old or younger and retraining my little child again.
Yeah.
And in doing that, which will cause me as an adult to respond in such better ways and becoming my higher self.
Right. And we'll go through that. So, if you've been feeling raw lately, emotional, triggered, disconnected, or something in your life or relationship is being exposed, you're not broken.
No.
You're being shown something. And there was never a requirement for perfection on this path. It's what I read, perfection is anti human.
Right. It
And
is.
we won't be perfect, and that comes, there's no judgment even in this conversation. We are going to be really authentic with you, and this topic has given us a little bit of the jitters because it's hit home for both of us. And I know that you listening right now, this is going to hit you somewhere you're going to realize that there are aspects of your inner child that are really wanting to be heard and seen, and we'll be sharing about that. So you're allowed to be messy, and you're allowed to get it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
It's not failure, it's how you find out what's true for you.
Right. Yeah.
Because at your core, you are not your mistakes, regardless of what your teachers and your parents and adults, right, or spouses tell you. You are not your reactions either. When you have some kind of reaction to anything that's not in balance, it's not you, it's your inner child
That's right.
crying.
Yep.
See
Crying out.
me. Yeah, like little temper tantrums
Wants to
and
be seen, heard, appreciated,
valued.
loved.
You are just so much more than that, much cleaner and whole. And this journey, this human experience is about learning to live from that place.
Yep. Yep. And today we're going to have a deep, sincere conversation about what the inner child is. As a pastor for 15 years, 3 semesters of psychology in college, I never heard of inner child work. But that's the part of you that still holds on to the unmet needs, the old wounds, the emotional patterns, and they quietly run your life and your relationships. And if you're not aware of them, we invite you to come sit with us at the fire tonight. We want to open up tonight with the sacred container in prayer as we explore the inner child topic today. Divine creator and healer, we welcome your presence into this sacred sojourner space today. May every word spoken bring comfort, truth, healing, and peace to those listening. We lift up every person who operates from trauma responses born from inner child wounds, those carrying fear, anxiety, shame, and emotional exhaustion from pain they experienced so long ago. Bring gentleness to the parts of them still hurting and remind them that their survival responses were never weakness, but evidence that they've endured. May they feel safe, seen. May they feel loved and supported as they continue their healing journey. We especially pray for Shelley, Zan's friend. We ask that you surround her with comfort, strength, and trustworthy love. Heal the hidden wounds in her heart and bring peace to every burden she carries. Where there has been pain, bring restoration. Where there has been heaviness, bring her hope. May this podcast be a sacred place of encouragement and healing for everyone listening, reminding them that they are never alone, that healing is possible. Let it be.
And so it is.
And so it is.
Wow. I'm feeling really yummy in my heart. Thank you, sweetie. So here's what's really important about right now. Everything that's been coming up for you lately, and the time of this podcast is May, the first week of May. We just went through, for those of you that are listening in the present moment, a Scorpio pink full moon, which was really about revealing what's hidden underneath the surface, right? So, like, this is such a perfect topic for what that moon was. It's like truths, emotions, patterns, relationship dynamics, all of it was that moon. So, we like to do ceremony around full moons as a release. You release things, and a new moon is you bring it in as a creation. And we both knew that that full moon was going to be pretty intense. I don't think we realized how intense.
No, we didn't begin to know.
uh, and the intensity was because we actually went to a sound healing, and we were in the presence of a giant gong, and we went there hoping that it was going to bring more peace to our hearts. But what it did, because it was a Scorpio moon, and if you've ever encountered Scorpio, it's just like it is, it's a stinger. It just brought up all the stuff, right? It was like a clearing, like the frequency of the sound was like vibrating all the gunk out. And we were walking through the fire big time,
Big time.
even though we knew it.
Walking through it.
Even
Yeah.
though we know it. So this is an example of this, like this inner child that comes up. In that situation, Troy was upset that I was on the couch finishing up a social post. He felt rejected. And I was not rejecting him. I was just hurrying up and taking space to get back in bed with him. But it was so personal.
Yeah.
It was so personal at that time.
I took it personal.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't listen to the four agreements, did I?
No. But
Golly.
yes, but in that time I knew that it was coming up for a reason, and so I, went into my own response. And so if you've been going through anything like that, it's not your fault. You are
No,
not
no.
wrong. You are not broken, because Pluto is retrograde in Aquarius. So it's not just personal anymore. And what's happening is we're in a space that's in between. So it's like something has ended, but the new hasn't fully landed. And I feel like that too. We're in that in between because there was a transition, because that was super intense.
Mm.
And now we have actually had quite a few days of peace, where we're exploring, new aspects of ourselves. And so it's deeper. And this is where the real audit happens, right? Not just what happened, but ask yourself, what are you still holding on to that doesn't belong in your future? Because the energy isn't here to collapse you, it's here to rebuild you
Right.
correctly this
Yep.
time.
Yep. It's here to reveal what's inside and to expose it. That's what it's here to do. It shows what needs to be looked at in order to be corrected, in order to be done in a better way.
Right. And the beautiful thing that I'm going to credit Troy to is, that was a difficult evening that we went through. And in the morning, he had come to me and he had said to me that, listen, I got to do things differently. What you
Mm-hmm.
said is that you saw it, how it responded, and that you felt rejected.
Yeah. And that comes from my inner child, always being rejected.
Right. So, and I'm sure a lot of people have those experiences of, what your overbearing parent, or not loving you enough, or giving you too much responsibility, right? Because, like, the truth is, your parents, even though we look up to them and we think, hey, you're our parents, you should know everything. They too had traumas, right? So it's not, I don't even think it's just our traumas, it's these ancestral lineages where we are connecting and cycling through, which is what we call karma, right? You guys have, I'm sure, heard like what goes around comes around, but this is a much deeper layer. it goes with you when you're in your DNA when you're born, and now you've inherited it. So
Right.
the way that the planet is moving in this time, it's about clearing at a rapid speed. So don't be afraid of what's happening to you right now, but it is important that we all look at it.
Yeah. We need to look at it. Uh, I'd like to reiterate something you said, talking about the moon phases and all of that. As a pastor for 15 years, you don't get into that side of astrology and looking at stuff that way within the world of the church and the Southern Baptist Life Church. But Scripture does say that Daniel discusses the inner eternal nature of the stars of God's wisdom. And I knew there was something to all this, all the astrology. As a pastor, I would go into a nursing home and full moon. You would have your
That must have been crazy.
yeah, yeah. In other words, there
Oh
was a
my
total
god.
different atmosphere during those times.
Yeah.
The nurses' aides, the CNAs, everybody admitted to that. I just wanted to say that because for a long time I thought, oh, that's one of them astrology people that was off the rocker.
Right.
I mean, the evidence was there. The writing was on the wall.
Yeah.
You get around dementia patients around the full moon and see if they ain't
Yeah.
if they're not jacked up 3 times more than they are when it ain't full moon.
And in that full moon, did you feel it also in yourself?
In myself, absolutely,
Right.
absolutely, even though for a long time I ignored it. I would ignore it and just pass it off as it is what it is.
I mean, do you think it's helpful? So we basically will go into chat and we'll say, "Hey, this full moon is coming up. What do we need to know about it?" Do you find that helpful, or is that just like Zan's
Yeah,
thing?
no, especially after this last full moon.
Mm.
No, in other words, we read it, we seen it was coming.
Yeah.
But I do know now I will be more intentional at looking at being prepared for
Mhm. Yeah, exactly.
it.
Put the guardrails up.
But I just wanted to say that it,
Thank you for doing that.
in other words, it's very real. There's a lot of truth to it, and it's even in Scripture. I mean,
Yeah.
Daniel recognized it.
So let's move to the inner child. So some of you that are listening might never have even heard of inner child. And when I first met Troy, first of all, when I first met Troy, he didn't know any of this
Mm-mm.
at all. He came over to my house and I had him pull an oracle card. And that was kind of the beginning of his journey.
Right,
And right when we were going through, we were starting to see your inner child come up, right? You were reacting to things that to me were not outrageous, but you had some strong reactions, and so I recommended that you talk to one of my angel readers,
mm,
Pamela, and you had a reading with her. You could call it a psychic reading, you could call it a oracle reading. She does a prayer meditation, talks to the angels, and actually what happens is she talks to them way before she talks to you, and then she just kind of gives a big dissertation to you about
mm-hmm.
you without you interrupting her.
Right,
And I'd love for you to share that story so that people know that before this, you really had never had a reading before.
never.
You were just like, "Okay, yay, let's
Yeah,
do
I was very
this."
standoffish from that kind of stuff, from readings, from anybody trying to, and I held my hat on the scripture where it says, "Stay away from mediums and the witchcraft, the devil worship." But that's not at all what Pamela was. And for her to be able to speak into my life and ask me questions about my past and know about my past the way she did, and she read me like a book. It was like someone that she knew. It's like she had already talked to my mother, and which shows me that now I fully understand that she was in communication with my spirit guides, my angels, Raphael and Michael, and we went into the inner child and the emotional trauma that I had gone through, and she showed me how there was no love for the inner child, and that's what brought me to where I was today, and why I still responded and reacted the way I do because of that lack of love, and how all I was wanting to do was to be seen, heard, valued that way. And it was the neatest thing. It was kind of scary at first just because of the unknownness of it and never heard of it, never done it before. But going back to my little boy, I call him my little boy, got a picture of him. I go back to that wounded child who was wounded because of the stepfather, the things that I went through in life. And I love on him there. And I put him in a bubble to where he can't be hurt. And I give him his dog. I give him his Tonka truck.
So I just want to pause for a second because if we don't know what an inner child is, it's like a snapshot of you when you're younger, and there's a lot of healing work around it, and that people will make recommendations like go love that inner child. So healers will take you back to a time that you remember that's significant, and then you talk to the child at that point.
Hmm.
So, we work with a beautiful therapist. Her name is Nancy, and we love her. She's out of Georgia, and I did some inner child stuff with her, and it was funny because she like took me back to when I was 8 years old and I was playing in the backyard with my Barbie house, and then she would say to me, like, "Go talk to her and tell her, like, hey, do you like, I'm here to help you. Do you need help with, XYZ or whatever?" And when you do this with somebody, I could see my inner child, and my inner child said to me, "No, I don't need you. I'm fine." Which I
Hmm.
totally laughed at because I was like, "Oh, look, my 8-year-old self is, like, super sassy to me, my adult self," which
Go
is
for
like
go.
right, right, so then I was like, "Oh, that's accurate," like, obviously, that's my inner child, right? So that wasn't the point where any pain was or where anything had come, and so there's a practice when you identify what that inner child needs, you become the parent to the inner child and love on that inner child in that moment.
Right.
So part of this path that we're going to talk about is identifying what that inner child. So then your samskaras, right? Samskaras are, what are you suppressing? Okay, so
Hmm.
now you know you're suppressing something. When do you snap at your neighbor or snap at the Starbucks girl? When you have reactions that give way to other people that have nothing to do with those other people,
Yeah.
that's your inner child.
Right.
That is
And that was the strangest thing for me to go back to my little boy and parent and love on
mm,
him as he had never
oh,
been loved. It sounds weird, especially for men, to jump inside that role and to go back to that inner child is in today's society, that's not manly.
right.
But in the same token, and as hard as it was for me to do that, as I started doing that, and I loving on that child at different times in his life when the trauma came in, has so I mean, yeah, I know you can see a big difference.
Oh, 100%.
I
Well, and
mean,
and there was a podcaster I heard who just said everybody's just walking around with their own inner child. Like
mhm,
literally all of you are displaying aspects of your inner child. When your behaviors are not aligned in that high frequency of love and compassion and joy all the time, anything that's the exception of that is your inner child crying out. And that could be all kinds of things, overcompensating, people pleasing, anger,
anger, that's my big one, anger.
fear. Where do you think fear comes from? Fear
Yep,
comes from the baseline of the inner child. And so let's talk about what happens in a relationship when your inner child is running the show, but you think it's your partner.
mm. Yeah, let's talk about that. You talked about the neural nets that trains us how it's basically that habit that we fall into. I think of our field out here. Once we react in a way towards our partner that we've reacted in a way our whole life, it's so hard to get to a point when that fear and that anger of whatever the discussion or argument, whatever you want to call it, comes up. It's so hard to react in a different way. Kind of like, we take our dogs on that walk every night. And out here in a 120-acre field out behind the house, we got us a path through there. And
Mhm.
it's easy walking on that path because it's beat down. But we get outside of that path and it becomes hard. And that's the same thing with this. It's easy to continue to do the same things we've done for so long because it's kind of just like that path. It's been trained to be that way. But when you get out of that and start trying to respond in a better way that serves yourself, that is more becoming as a person and helps you reach your higher self, is totally different because those fears, now you're taking time to face them head on instead of running from them.
Right. So, like, I'm going to list 5 things that are some knowns about the inner child. Number one is the truth is your partner isn't the problem. Your unmet need is,
Right.
right? And so it's unmet needs like, and look at while you're driving, while you're listening, while you're running, whatever you're doing, listening to this podcast, raise your hand in your head. Hey, how about I'm not important?
Mm.
How about I'm going to be left behind? I have to be, I have to react or scream to be heard because
Hmm.
nobody will listen to me. Do you have any?
Well, yeah, I've got a bunch of them. Mine is I react from fear because of feeling like I'm not worthy enough to not be left behind.
Mm.
Well, scared of being abandoned.
Mm.
Where the unworthiness and coming from that shame, that's some of the lowest vibration we can be at. That's where I operated for so long because
Yeah.
of it.
And there's healthy shame and then there's like toxic shame, which, we can dig in if we have time on that. And so what do we do with that? We feel it, but you're in your emotion, right? You're
Hmm.
hot with it. So you blame your partner. You escalate small conflicts into big arguments.
Yeah, my projecting, I'm kind of laughing because I've had a aha moment, but I'm
Uh,
projecting my reaction onto my partner, onto Zan as it's her fault.
right. Like I'm the parent.
Yeah, bless God. When that's really not the case at all.
And that's what we do, right? And so if you don't know your inner child, you will assign your partner the role of the parent who failed you.
Right.
So we invite everybody to really look at that. And how is that in the relationship? Have you just gone on and just been like that with your partner and just accepted it? Like we've gotten into it and I've said, look, our inner children are just wanting to
Yeah.
be seen right now. In fact, even when we got together in the beginning, it was like I always said, like, we're like two little kids. But now I feel like we're embodying the adult in us. The number two is triggers are time machines, not truth. So this is where the intensity doesn't match the moment, right? The reaction feels disappropriate and there's urgency, fear, or anger underneath it. I can say for a long time, I was kind of mean to people on the phone, right? If you were like teller or like somebody on the phone who was helping me, especially if you didn't speak English,
It
I
gets
would,
all over me too.
right? Or finances. When you're like upset with your bank account or somebody says like, "Oh, your card was declined," for example. And how many people react out of fear? I mean, that's
Hmm.
pretty common.
Yeah.
And I never really looked at it just that it would just come up, but that's the inner child, that's the fear.
Hmm.
If you take triggers at face value, you'll try to fix the wrong problem.
Right. Yeah.
If you're not looking at it properly,
Well, that's why, because we don't want to look at it. We don't want to go back and look at that. So we make
right?
something else the problem.
Or someone.
Someone, yeah.
Yeah. So why are you overreacting shifts to what does this remind you of?
Yeah. Yeah. Having to ask yourself the question, what does this remind you of? What do you got to
Mm,
go back to?
I really love that. I mean, it's so funny. We're learning so much just going through this ourselves as mirrors for each other. But what does that remind you? I think I did say that recently to
Oh,
you.
yeah. You did
And
the other day. You asked me, what does this remind you of? Why are you, go back and, and since I've started doing that, going back and seeing the stuff that and how I respond and react because, with my trauma responses, which isn't pleasant for you at all when we get in and it's just so crazy going back to seeing why that fear kicked in at the moment that I feel rejected or I feel there could be abandonment starting because as a little child I was abandoned and that abandonment as a kid was so real. It was so painful that I don't want to experience that again.
no, no.
When that threat of that pain starts being exposed again in my mind, not that, and it's a perception. That's my perception in my mind. It ain't the fact that it's really going to happen, but yet I perceive it that way. Therefore, I go to acting from that, and I go to projecting that fear onto you, making it your fault.
Then what happens, what they say IRT in real time is then I get more and more frustrated because I'm not seen. And now all of a sudden it's like crazy town because he's like upset at me with his stuff, and it takes me a minute to realize, like, okay, this isn't about me, but it's so quick. Like, all of a sudden I'm in it, and I'm back to my childhood where my dad would basically just tell me this is the way it is, and you just deal with it without ever hearing my voice. And so what do? I get upset.
Yeah.
And then I storm around, and then I give you lectures, and you're not listening to me because you're in your inner child, and then I'm in my inner child. And now all of a sudden we're back to dumpster diving,
Yeah, we're back to
which I had talked about in a previous podcast, which is once you're in an ego universe with another being, there is no talking.
no, the resolve will not come.
It will not come.
No.
And so we've that's another thing that we learned, which is really to regulate our own peace. And we'll literally say, like, I'm going to go dysregulate, and
Hmm.
we'll leave and go clear it, and then come back. And and we have been, actually, which is amazing. We have definitely come back from that. But that I'd love for you guys to just look at a place in your life where you are reacting and blaming somebody else, and it's really your own stuff. Because ultimately, the goal for all of us is to move to that compassionate space. And God bless you people out there who get it, who have done your work and you've moved through that. But there's so many of us that are walking around that haven't. And we're not going to reach maximum frequency as a planet until we all move through this. Okay, so the next one is the hidden contract, which is love me the way I didn't get loved.
Right. Yep.
So, what that looks like is an unconscious want.
And here's the problem with that: love me as I didn't get loved. In other words, in order for me to love you the way you didn't get loved, I'm trying to love you from a different space than who I am,
Yeah.
or vice versa. I can't, I fell in love with Zan, and I want Zan to be who she is. And then when I get into my inner child trauma responses, I try to turn Zan into something she's not, and I make her as the fault because she's not doing that. Whenever it's my inner child trauma that needs to be looked at and understood.
Right. Like reassurance, inclusion,
Hmm.
emotional safety, like that I'm not gonna leave. So one thing that has come up is that it appears that, you think I don't love you, but
Hmm.
I'm showing you love the way I know how to love, and it's evident that I love you, and yet it will still come up, and I'm like, but that's also part of my inner trauma. So it's like I'm overcompensating because in my household it was conditional. The way that you got love is by earning it. And
Right.
so I'm earning it with you. I'm doing all these things. So it's just so effed up.
It's crazy.
It's such a
Well,
maze of like
a perfect example of that is when I was a child and I would come into the house. You told me the other day, you said, you got to start learning to read the room. Look at how I show up for you. In other words, I'm not going to be showing up for you the way that I show up for you if I don't love you.
right.
But when I walk in the door, if things ain't as I think they should be, which is
Mhm.
my perception, okay, you've had a bad day and your attitude's a little off, which you're allowed to do.
Yeah.
I mean, ain't nothing wrong with that. We all have it. But when I was a child and I walked in the door, first thing I would do was look at Vernon's, which was my stepdad, and I was on guard as
Mhm.
and I'm doing that as an
Mm.
adult. I'm
Mhm.
coming in the house on guard, and then if your attitude seems to be a little off, uh,
Yes.
and in other words, I brought that from my inner child up
Mm.
to now, which is
Yeah.
so dangerous because just because Gypsy Jane has drove you nuts all day and got you a little frustrated, that's got nothing to do about your love for me.
Right.
But I take that as a threat, and then
Mhm.
I perceived it that way.
Right.
And that's just an example that is so crazy, so
I
crazy.
did, but
Sitting
that
here
makes
calm right
sense.
now, looking at it, I see it up, But I said that to say this: it's a good way to help us to move through and past these things by reading the room. Look how she does instead of perceiving it my way. Look how she does show up for me. How she loves me. How she's got my just little things. Makes me a cup of coffee and brings it to me with a smile. I mean, that ain't somebody that don't love you. Just it's learning to do life all over again is where I'm at. Going back to that little boy in that trailer park in Gainesville, Florida, as far as I can remember, from 2 years old all the way up till 17 years old, and reprogramming him into understanding that he is worth he
Is.
that all of that.
But it's
That's
true. It's true. If you haven't ever gone through that, like, and your whole life is done one way, it's very hard to completely pivot, but and it's so beautiful to see you being conscious about it, because if you're not conscious about it, then that's when it comes out sideways, right?
mhm,
That's when you have the emotional spikes, and then you are making other people responsible for regulating your emotions.
right,
And what does that mean? That means that in those past situations, and we're just giving you a snapshot of our previous life as we were learning each other. But in the past, I would have to regulate you. And so in my now, I come in and check on you and see where you're at,
right.
because I'm the peacemaker, and I'm not going to activate. And I have to watch myself in making sure that I stay true to myself and not put that on you, because that just creates unspoken needs that turn into expectations. Then it's like, okay, well, I'm going to try to be this so he doesn't react. And now I feel resentful because
Well,
my
you've
needs are not
compromised yourself at this point. In
exactly.
other words, Zan can't be Zan when she's
No.
doing that. She's not in her free spirit. She's not being able to be creative, and that ain't who I want her to be. I want her to be who she is. And I don't know. I just trying to look within myself, the inner child trauma, changing the way that I've always reacted, and getting to a point of responding instead of reacting, taking that pause. When she's upset, give her that space. Don't follow her around and chase her down and say, "No, bless God, we're gonna fix this right now."
Right. I'll bet there are a lot of people out there that do that. There are personalities that need to what it because Jason talked about that in the last
Hmm.
podcast, which is that, you were out of control, so you needed to fix it right then and there,
Right.
right? And some of us just shut down and get quiet until it goes away because we don't want to deal with it. But I want to acknowledge too that, during all of this, so we like to pull oracle cards, and we pulled an oracle card that was talking about these indigenous people and the wisdom that they use. And I thought it would be good to share today at the fire, because it's a very powerful transition we're in right now. And so, in the indigenous traditions in the Andes, they believe that the soul doesn't just belong to you, it belongs to the body and the cosmos. And so when something is out of alignment in one, it affects all three. So when we carry shame, when we suppress our truth, and when we don't acknowledge what's really happening inside of us, which is the inner child, then it creates disruption, not just emotionally, but spiritually. And this goes back to spiritual sovereignty. This is
Hmm.
all what we're talking about, because, there is no one aspect to spiritual sovereignty, but when you are free, when you are completely free of all of your internal demons, that's when you can co create such beautiful magic.
Exactly, and that's what Jesus was talking about when he says, when we get right spiritually, we'll be, he said, free indeed, and that's the freedom he's talking about.
Right. It's understanding your own truth. So the path back to alignment, this card says, starts with something very simple but powerful. Your truth, right? And I always call it what? Data points.
Mhm.
You get upset when I'm telling you, no, 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 let's just get to the facts here, right? Let's keep the emotions out of it. This happened, this happened, this happened. Truth, speaking it, facing it, and letting what's been hidden come into the light. Because what stays in the shadows controls you.
In other words, I was at the dentist and he was gonna do some work on my mouth, and, I wasn't wanting him to, and I was anxious, as Zan has come to learn that I don't do well with doctors nor dentists and needles, and I'd rather take a beat. And I told that dentist, I said, "Man, I don't want you to look in there." And he had that little light on his head, you know how they wear 'em.
Yeah.
He said,
I don't like dentists.
he said he said, "Until the light goes in, will what's inside be revealed?" And, I thought to myself when he said that, "Until the light goes in, what's inside won't be revealed." I thought, "Boy, that'll preach right there, when the light goes in." And that's what takes place within your awakening, within your coming to understand spiritually who you are. and wanting to become your higher self is as you start receiving that love from the divine and from your spirit guides, and you start looking at yourself spiritually, the light is going inside, and the light uncovers what's in the darkness. And when it uncovers it, we got to start working on it. And that's the inner child stuff, the trauma that you go through as a child, the things that hurt you, that programmed you to react the way you do because of that trauma. And I'm bringing it up and looking at it. I will never forget Gabby when she was doing that Capricorn reading, and she says, when that fear comes up, don't run from it. Look at it. And that's something I had never done in my life before. I never looked at it. I always ran.
Right.
I
Well, you
always,
didn't, but you didn't have any awareness,
I
right?
didn't.
And the awareness is where you can actually work from it. I want to touch on because I think the biggest toxic emotion from both of our inner child is shame.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not really, sure where it's at, but I definitely like to run from shame. And shame actually is one of the things I think broke up my first marriage because I was shamed, wasn't shame myself, but I was shamed for being who I was, which is out of alignment with who I was. So even as a young child, I
Right.
knew that I was a good person. I knew, but I was shamed for being overweight. I was shamed for not getting the best grades or whatever. I was shamed. Yours was way worse than mine, but it doesn't matter. The
It's still,
child, it's emotional work. So there's toxic shame and then there's healthy shame, right? And I was like, well, what is healthy shame? So, healthy shame is like, I made a mistake and I can grow from this. Toxic shame is, I am the mistake. And that's where people get stuck is that they say that you believe that you are the problem, so then you'll avoid looking at anything. You'll defend it, you'll project it, you'll repeat it. And that's the perfectionism. And I definitely feel like I was toxic shame because it, I made a mistake and I could grow from this. I never did that.
mm-hmm.
Up until a couple of years
I never
ago,
looked at it that way.
I couldn't even
Never.
I couldn't even say I'm sorry because I
Mm.
was never sorry because I would never admit that
Right.
that I made a mistake because if I made a mistake, then the toxic shame came out, and so that was a huge one for me. And so the invitation, right, is to look at these parts of yourself and really see. Look at that deep breath. Harris, just like, ugh. Nobody wants to look. I get it, you guys. Nobody wants to look at that stuff.
Mm.
But the release is where it's at because you're not here to get it right all the time. You're here to mess up. You're here to grow and you're here to evolve. And when you can sit with your discomfort without attacking yourself, that's when the shift happens. I know that's happened for you. You want
Yeah.
to share?
Yeah, you was talking about that shame, and it's so sad that people can speak into your life
Yeah.
and you believe it. My whole life as a child, I was told I was going to be a dumbass and that I would never amount to nothing. And I remember going through middle school and high school thinking that I could never measure up to all these other kids because I'm such a dumbass. I never measured up to in a relationship because it was spoke into my life, and I
Mhm.
believed it. I mean, I believed it to the point to where it so affected how I reacted in life.
But you overcame.
Yeah, I did overcome, you know, and I did it in such a way that I didn't realize that I had even done it. It's really not been but the last year that I've come to understand that I'm not that dumbass. Everything I've ever done, when I walked away from any job, I was valuable. I always was the best at
Yeah.
everything I did because I had to fight that mentality of being that dumbass and never amount to nothing. But then I was able to show myself, that really wasn't true.
So, Troy showed me pictures of his childhood and he never really looks happy in any of those pictures. And so if you out there had a terrible childhood, there's ways for you to love that inner child. And
Mhm.
so we're not ever going to tell you what to do or how to do it. We're just going to say what we've done. But what I did for you was I took this picture that he had. This is why I love ChatGPT so much. I took this picture that he had he looked sad and I scanned it into chat and I asked chat to put it in a bubble and to make him smile and to have his dog next to him. And we took that and we put that on the altar.
Yep, yep,
So
me
we
and Samson.
so we changed how he viewed it. And so how did that I'd love you to share, like, how did that affect you every day looking at that picture of that boy?
It's been so major the way it's affected me. It was so special that it meant that much to you because you loved that little boy.
I do.
You gave that little boy love that he's never had before that way. And being able to love that little boy myself, I'm kind of his superhero. I
Mm,
go back in time and I tell him, look, I'm here and ain't nobody never gonna lay a hand on you again. I
mm.
give him that safety that he's always wanted, not having to deal with abuse. It's done so much for me to know that I am safe. I am protected as the adult. I am loved. I'm seen. I'm heard. And I am valued. I am somebody. I go back to Abraham Hicks in their book, how I was placed on this earth as a child in perfect form, as the scripture says, made in the image of God. There was nothing wrong with me at that point.
No, and
It wasn't until the outside influence came in that corrupted how I thought. It's so sad that we have to go through that. But what a day to be able to go back and to heal that and to look at it and to know that it wasn't that little boy's fault.
no.
It's just been that's been a big one for me. Coming to realize, I thought it was me. My brother told me you got your ass beat all the time because you was always screwing up. Well, he made it my fault when he said
Mm,
that, but it wasn't my fault. It wasn't my fault that I had an abusive situation, and that's something else I've come to understand. He didn't know how to act because that was the way he was shown to act.
right.
It really wasn't his fault.
Right. I mean that there's that's a whole conversation about understanding, there's a lot of ancestral healing and
Yeah.
lineage healing that you can do to see, how your parents and their parents and their parents and what happened in and I would love to talk about that at some time because I got a great story about that as well.
And the neat thing about it is the forgiveness part. That's something. Forgiveness, I've been able to go back and forgive the stepdad. And I've got a love in my heart for him. I grew up with him. 2 years old till 17. I grew up with him. I
Mhm.
mean, when you're around somebody for that many years, even though they did bad stuff to you, you still love them. And I didn't realize that I had that
Sometimes.
that kind of love for him. But with that said, I've been able to since I've started looking at my inner child and healing my inner child and understanding that the stepfather was operating from the way he was taught to operate, and it
Right.
really wasn't his fault that he was brought up that way.
Right, because his inner child
Was
was
wounded too.
never loved, was never,
Hey,
you know what I
you know,
mean? And so it's a vicious cycle, and this is what our planet is moving to is this awakenings, alert to all of this underlying trauma because it cannot live in the darkness anymore. You will not be able to vibrate high enough to receive and have the magical, beautiful life unless you start looking and releasing those things. And a lot of
right?
people who've had really deep, deep trauma know this, right? There's a lot of people, but maybe you think that you're good and you just have a fight once in a while with people around you or your neighbors or you know what I mean?
Right.
Like if you can't get along with people and there's patterns in your life, jobs that you have to replace, you have to keep changing for some reason, relationships that you keep
Relationships.
having, these are things that you need to look at. What is your inner child? Because what happens if you don't address it? If you don't do the work and you ignore your inner child, and we know this if you haven't done it, right? So in your relationship, what's going to happen? One partner becomes the parent
Yep.
or the other partner becomes a parent to the other partner. Respect erodes,
Yep.
attraction drops
Dissipate. Yeah. It's
because you don't feel safe anymore, right? You're living from a response of either your trauma or their trauma, and it's hard for you to continue to be intimate. And
right.
then that leads to all kinds of other problems, right? And eventually emotional shutdown or exit.
Yep. Yep.
If you look at all divorce, it's all based from the inner child's not getting met.
Right. Yeah, I would agree with that. And here's something else. How many people do you know go into marriage with the attitude that they divorce.
Yeah. Well, you don't lose love, right? If you have deep love for somebody, you don't lose that. What you lose is the capacity after carrying what is not yours.
Right. Carrying, in other words, not being able to be the person who you are
Right.
because you're carrying stuff that ain't yours to begin with.
Yeah, and that can be frustrating. And what conscious work actually looks like is naming the feeling. So this is the juicy part, and we will wrap this up shortly because we know this has been a long podcast, but it's juicy, it's important, it's good. So we don't want to carry this over and make it too long, but this is really valuable for us anyway. It has been. This is the core issue that Troy and I have mirrored for each other is our own inner child, but it's feelings, right? So if your inner child isn't being heard, and I'm going to speak for myself, is that I don't listen as well because I am listening from the filter of my feelings. So you could be like, wah, 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 wah. And I'd be like, oh my God, I'm so hurt right now because I'm not even listening to you because
Hmm.
I'm having a reaction, right? So we have been practicing saying, I feel naming what is the feeling so that your other partner can actually hear what's going on
Yep. Yeah.
because it's not the
Uh,
truth of what's coming out. It's just that inner, right? Naming the feeling
naming the feeling and what you need.
and what you need.
Yep.
Exactly. Another one is owning the origin. This isn't about you.
Right. Boy, that pisses me off. I'd tell her, I remember the first time you said that to me. Bless God, it is about me. This is a relationship. I'm in it just as much as you are.
Right. This is old. This is old. So I now I'll say it because I know sometimes you're just in your stuff and you just happen to be present with your partner. And
Yeah.
so it's great when you name it. I don't know. Does it help now that if I say it?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely, it does. Naming it, going back, looking at it.
Right.
I mean, yeah, it helps me tremendously to be able to name it.
That's good. And then asking cleanly, can you include me in this?
Yeah. Can you include me in this? Yeah. That's that clarifying question.
Clarifying question, right? So, and I love that we said earlier is what does it remind you of?
Yep. Going
Um,
back to
yeah, because it's,
and why do you feel threatened right now?
mm,
And that's the thing that I've started asking myself when we start getting heating and the fear comes up in me. Okay, why do I feel threatened right now? This woman loves me.
yeah,
And and that's been done wonders for our situations not escalating to the point where we blow the roof off the house. But I mean, let's just be honest. We had some doozies. But who don't in a relationship? But ours is, and with that said, not suppressing my feelings and being able to know what I feel has
mm,
really helped me.
mm,
It's kind of like that piece of dynamite,
yeah,
I told you about the other night.
yeah,
When I don't suppress the feeling,
mm-hmm,
I cut it off and I tell you this is what I'm feeling and this is why. That okay, what I'm doing is cutting the quick off before it reaches the dynamite to explode.
yeah.
And we don't have the explosion when I do that first.
Well, and in fairness, and this is probably applicable to men, I don't know. And women, we are known for castrating men. We basically don't care what your feelings are. We don't take stock into it. It's mostly about us because we're emotional and we're hormonal. And unless you're evolved, unless you're a woman who's done your own work and you've
Right.
looked at your own inner child stuff. I mean, I actually did a whole workshop understanding men and we had to do this whole ceremony around not castrating men. But it was like, there's this defense that women get in to allow you to feel.
Mhm.
I'll bet that feels good for you because you weren't allowed to feel.
Right. I
You were
wasn't
just
never allowed to
no,
feel.
you were just shut up, just sit
Mhm.
down, like your feelings don't matter, just sit in the corner. Mine was, you need to listen to your mother no matter what. I was just like, what are you talking about? Like,
Right.
I know what I'm talking about. Nobody wants that. Nobody, that's not healthy for anybody to tell you how to be. You get to be who you want to be. You get to be the liberation of your own life. But if you've been shut down by bosses, spouses, even children, right?
Mhm.
Children telling their own parents how to be, then that can be so challenging. The unconscious is always trying to rise into awareness so it can be integrated into who we are meant to become. And so just be soft and gentle with yourselves and your partners as we're all going through this. crazy
Extend grace.
roller coaster.
Extend grace to yourself.
I love this quote that we're reading in the We book that Jason brought up in the last podcast is heroic journeys always lead through dark valleys and difficult confrontations, but if we persevere, we discover what we are truly capable of becoming.
Mm,
It's super important, I believe, in relationship. And in this relationship, we don't fail
yeah,
because we've gone both of us have gone round and round in relationship, hoping the other person would complete us, right? That the other person would be the one. And, your partner didn't come into your life to complete you. They came in to reveal the parts of you
yep, to
that
mirror.
still need your attention. I love that. I love that we're meeting in this fire together and going through this together because, that's some deep work to be able to witness this fucking shit that we were grown with
We were contaminated with.
that we were contaminated with. And it's a special person to be able to witness that and to see that and to keep loving you through that.
You don't know what it means to me.
I just want to thank you.
Thank you, sweetie, too. What a blessing.
Okay, so to wrap this up, is there anything that we want to put in the fire tonight?
Yeah, what I want to put in the fire tonight, I come with a heart of gratitude. Looking back at now and seeing my life, the hard stuff I've had to deal with, and that everyone has to deal with. I'm not an exception. Everybody's got the hardships, but to be able to give gratitude to the fire for the divine and how they've worked in my life, my spirit guides have come in revealing what I am, knowing that I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, that God places everybody on this earth as a special, special human. And yeah, maybe we get contaminated from parents, teachers, or whoever, but that contamination didn't have to stay inside of me. And I want to put that in the fire so it goes up in smoke and hopefully smother the people that's listening to this so they can know that they're not bad people. They're not messed up people. They're just contaminated by someone who didn't know no better.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I'll just piggyback on that. My leave into the fire is also prayers because the trauma is coming up and it's so difficult out there. We're hearing it from everybody, what's being shown and revealed. And we understand how difficult that is. And my prayers go out to you to give you strength and to look at those inner parts and find out where in your body is that sitting and just love that. Love the little you. Find yourself at 5, 7, 10, even those teenage years, and just hug yourself. Envision the hug that you give yourself because it's not easy work, but there's so much more freedom in your existence when you release all of that because it clogs your system with garbage and you don't even know it until it's gone. And when it's gone, it shows up in areas of your life in such a beautiful way. Like, I can just say that I've been having conversations with people and observing where I have been triggered most of my life, and I don't react that way anymore, which is showing me in my own world
True,
how much I've shifted and changed, and for that, I am truly grateful.
true healing.
Yeah.
True healing. Yep. It's a beautiful thing. So beautiful.
Yay, we made it through this episode.
Hallelujah. Yeah. Inner child trauma.
Oh boy. Well,
And even though I may not think of myself as I still should, maybe I've not arrived there yet. Maybe you've not arrived, you who are listening. Just know this, that the divine completely accepts you and loves you where you are.
and we do too.
And we do too.
We do too, sojourners.
And we come alongside of you, walking the path with you, not because we're better. We're not better.
No.
Not because we're above you, but with arms wrapped around you, walking with you.
Love and light,
Ease and grace.
peace and blessings. May you walk through the fire to find your own inner authority. Good night.